Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Lou from Manufacturing Talk Radio, the guy with the yellow jacket, and not such a black shirt this time. I decided that I was going to go multicolored. So here we are. We're having a special guest today. We have Tony Uphoff, who is the relatively new CEO of Thomas. And that's not Thomas Register or Thomas Net or Thomas Industries. It's just plain Thomas. 120 years in business. You're there a year and a half. The family made a decision to make changes within the company, and you've done that.
And, thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So tell us about the changes. What's going on? First of all, let me interrupt.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, and those of you who are too young, Thomas Register was the company that produced the green books. And it was one green book, and then it turned into 34 or 37 volumes of a very big book.
Yes.
And I've been a customer client since 1976.
Yeah.
I would like to know at some point what number client I am within your spectrum of all your clients.
I should look that up. I know we have some customers that are over 80 years.
Oh, God.
So you're in the 40-year category. But and by the way, we appreciate that.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. We'll see how much you appreciate it when my contract rolls around. So, Tony, tell us about this evolution that's happening. It's amazing.
First off, we're having a blast with it. And I think you mentioned before, 2018 is the 120th anniversary for the company. And as the company has grown exponentially over those years, the company got to a point where there was a lot of individual products and services that needed to be run differently. And so the family looked at the business and thought, it's time to bring in a fresh perspective. And I was fortunate enough to be introduced to the family. I had an awareness of the company, but once I really got inside, I thought, this is just a remarkable business. High brand awareness, low current brand understanding when I started. I think a lot of people, to your point on, is it Thomas or Thomas Publishing, what is it?
Or green books.
Or the big green books, right? But yet, no brand damage. People have a fondness for the company. They just really didn't know, I think in a broad sense, who we were today. So we've done a few different things. One is we rebranded the company, and we focus on the name of Thomas, and then each of our products fit into that. So we have three primary products that we offer to the marketplace. ThomasNet, which is the large platform. Thomas Marketing Services, which takes data from that platform and does broader marketing services for customers. And then Thomas Product Data Solutions, that takes sophisticated product information and puts it into CAD or BIM files and syndicates that on behalf of advertisers. So we organized the company around that and then engineered those products to work together. The other big change that we made, Lou, and you and I have talked about this before, we had a very large platform that generated a lot of use, but we really didn't focus on the use of it as a use case. So if you think of software where you focus on the user, we fundamentally went to a software-like model. And what we saw once we did that is active registered use went from, I think, about 100,000 to now it's getting close to 800,000 active registered users and growing. We're adding about 25,000 active registered users a month. We don't mandate that you register to use it, but you unlock a ton of features. There's 205 different features that you can unlock by registration.
As I remember, your monthly traffic is 1.6 million?
Yeah, I think on average, so we'll get a low of 1.5 to a high of 2 million visits per month. Of that, now increasingly over 50% are from active registered users. So we don't pay as much attention to visits as you might imagine. We're very interested in things like time on site, actions taken, and we also want to see who these people are, what kind of organizations they're working at. Are they really volume buyers? We're much more interested in that. And the way that we drive that is by providing them the product information, the supplier information, and the actionable information. That's the other thing that we've added. content and information that would supplement the buying process for them. We always had product information and supplier.
Right.
What's new over the last 18 months is fed into the same taxonomy. There could be things in and around steel, in and around valves, in and around pumps, whatever it might be, that could help the broad range of purchasing, from engineers to procurement professionals to MROs. In many cases, part of a buying process today is an education process.
Sure.
I got to understand something before I am willing to get on the phone with you.
Right.
And so we're obviously providing that as well.
One of the things, going back to the big green book days, and we advertised in many different industrial directories, none like Thomas. I mean, you were the king. And the only way we, however, was able to determine who and how many people are using it, a very rudimentary methodology, is that when we got a phone call, the salespeople would ask, "Where'd you hear of us?"
Right.
The old "where have you heard of us" story. And we never kept count, but we always knew 80% of the calls were coming out as of Thomas. Well, today it's a little bit different. First of all, our phone system doesn't work where it rings, because we have a different phone system that I got conned into. So I don't hear phones ringing. And that was my way of saying, is business good or bad?
Sure,
if the phone rings, if I hear that phone, I know things
it's like seeing customers walk in the door. Absolutely.
Exactly. So I don't get the "how do you hear of us" anymore, because they always say the internet. You don't have that total branding that they will say Thomas on internet. That doesn't happen. Figure out a way to do that, and you'll come up with something. As far as stats are concerned, we have some ability to capture stats. I know that we could also have the number of phone calls that we get. I believe that was something that I did do at one time, going back in time. We're not doing it now. I may have to go back to that, being that the phone doesn't ring. But what you're going to now, the only thing that's similar to what you did and what you are is the word Thomas. It's a different product.
You're right, Lou, and it's really fascinating. If you go back in history, the pre to post print days, in terms of number of years, isn't that long ago. But boy, do we live in a different world. I mean, it is remarkable to see what's happening. And I'd point out two data elements to that. The industrial buying process today, the research shows that buyers are up to 70% of the way through that process before they engage with a sales rep. That's the power of the internet. Now, this has both helped our business, but also been a challenge that I think we're on the right side of. So, the big green book is a brand in and of itself. It sits on your credenza, you hear it, so it was in and of itself a branding mechanism. The internet took away that opportunity. I think we've now more than caught up and perhaps even moving past that. So I'll give you an interesting example. Of our active registered users, 45% are millennial managers. Now, none of those folks were actually, most of them weren't alive when the last Big Green Book was published.
So they don't even know what it is.
You got it. If I was to talk to them and say, hey, the Big Green Books, they would look at me like I had two heads. They think of Thomas as a modern platform and data company that they use for product sourcing and supplier evaluation. And I think then the other generation, the boomer generations, are adopting the internet, as you well know, too. So I think the trend is our friend there. The other thing we've worked really hard at is, without going overboard on it, we've brought the brand of the company alive a little bit more. We've taken a page from your playbook. We're doing a lot more in video. We're putting information about our company out there in ways that I think people didn't see it before. So our search industriously, where we kind of have fun with, if you type an industrial term into a general search engine, you get something very different than if you type it into Thomas. Have been viewed by over 1.5 million people. Our Thomas Index report, which is our weekly video of trends in demand, has been now viewed by well over 2 million people. And again, all that means is, I think, step by step, we're, if not reintroducing, we're introducing Thomas perhaps not only to a new generation, but perhaps to previous generations who had lost touch with it.
I still think you should put a little logo, the Big Green Books, and just have it on the screen. And then the
With no explanation, just
it just says the big green books.
Yeah.
120 years or whatever it is.
You know, we've had some fun with that, and we have introduced it in different environments and talked about it. But I wouldn't be surprised if you still hear a reference to it.
Yeah, we do. You know, when we say Thomas, people when I talk about Thomas, what's Thomas?
Yeah,
there's a connection that's not there.
Yeah. And I think for most people, what Thomas is today is the most accessible product for us is ThomasNet. Mm-hmm. So I think to most people, ThomasNet is Thomas today. So ThomasNet is the modern equivalent of what was the directory of the register. Right. And so, you know, if people are just discovering ThomasNet is the core platform. All of our products and services are off of that platform. So it really is both, you know, the data and information platform that users use, but it also, you can see the whole company, if you know what I mean. You can understand what Thomas is just by understanding, you know, a quick tour of ThomasNet, if you will.
Right. So I understand, because I've been trying to get you on the phone for a couple of months, and I have to call in the militia, Mike Zaccato, to round you up. So where have you been? What have you been doing? What's all the travel?
Boy, we're doing a ton of stuff these days. So one is I try to spend a fair amount of time out with customers. Mm-hmm. You know, it's all well and good that we think we're doing great stuff.
40-year customers?
Yeah, in New York City. But it's really important that I spend, you know, as much as 20 to 25% of my time just, you know, what's on customers' minds. And we're also trying to do a better job, Lou, of sharing the data that we have to help our customers. And so, as I've shared with you, we have 3 sets of data that provide really interesting, you know, elements of industrial buying and understanding what's happening in the industry. The first is ThomasNet itself. Every 2 seconds, somebody's selecting a product or a supplier on the platform. We're now up to 2.5 petabytes of buyer behavior data.
That's bigger than the studio.
It is lots of data, right? So it's a huge amount of data, and I think we're getting better at understanding what's in that data that we can help illuminate. So the Thomas Index report would be a good example of that. Second thing we have, you were talking before about the idea of understanding, is the phone ringing, you know, is my marketing working? In September, we're going to roll out version 3.0 of WebTrax, which is our data analytics platform that really is much more about opportunity management. So it allows you to track, to identify, and engage with market opportunities. And if it's on your Thomas supplier page, you can see that. If it's on your own website, you can see that. And if it's coming to calling on the phone, you can see that and you can manage that. So that's a big focal point for us, but that's running on 15,000 industrial websites now. So that's this huge amount of data that we can absorb. And then the third area might surprise you. We are now up to, gosh, I think it's like 8,000 or 9,000 instances of HubSpot. HubSpot's a marketing automation platform. I'm sure you're very familiar with it. Well, we've got all the conversion metrics. So, you know, we anonymize this, but our ability to kind of say, hey, here's what works. Here's what works in industrial marketing. When you do this plus this plus this, you get a better outcome than if you don't do those things. So, long way of saying, we're trying to do a better job of coming out into the market and sharing that data with our customers and prospects. We've been on a tour, and we'll be reintroducing the tour in the fall, called the Thomas Together for Industry Tour. And what this basically is we go into each of the major regions and share the demand data on a national level, and then we say, hey, here's what's happening in your backyard. So here's what's happening in New Jersey. And we focus on local trends, and then we detail the buying process today. You know, I've shared with you, we did a massive research project to understand the industrial buying process beyond our own purchase data. We share those things with the audience, and then also best practices in digital marketing, which is kind of that third piece I was talking about. Here's what works. And clearly, we're selling as we're doing this, but I'd like to think that we're also educating, because it's hard to keep pace with this, and shame on us if we're not taking the data that we capture and helping our customers with it.
Well, that's similarly what we're doing with Manufacturing Talk Radio and Women and Manufacturing. We're promoting the story of manufacturing, and we're promoting the story of accomplished women in the manufacturing and other business area.
Yeah.
So we're educating people to come to us, listen to this. You'll get news, you'll get information. This is nothing you're going to see on CNN
Right.
or
Right.
Fox or
Right.
this one or that one, because all they're talking about is the news cycle of that
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
We are putting out information to that manufacturer or the woman that we want to hang out in pride
Yeah,
as to the level
absolutely.
of what she's doing
Yeah.
for this country.
Yeah.
And it's been working well.
Yeah.
We, to this day, we're still self-funded. You hear that, everybody? Send your checks in. We're self-funded, which can't go on forever.
Well, hey, as you know, we're one of your biggest fans. I think.
How about being one of our
Yeah.
biggest donors?
Well, you do see Thomas Advertising, I think, somewhere.
I
in,
do.
Manufacturing.
Yeah, right.
The work you're doing there, I think, twofold. One is you were way ahead of your time in this industry of what I'll call content marketing.
Mm-hmm.
If I provide valuable content, yeah, it's marketing for my company, but it's still valuable content. And
Right.
odds are you're going to engage, particularly if it's contextual content, meaning in this case about manufacturing or career development for women
Sure.
in this industry. I think the secondary thing is you're doing good by doing good. These are important things. And I think we're one of the initiatives we've taken on is the skills gap shortage. So
Big problem.
I wrote an op-ed piece for thehill.com that was picked up, strongly encouraging Congress to look at legislation that would start to help around some of the challenges around the skills gap. And it's an enormous, as you well know, we have a booming economy, we have a booming manufacturing industry in this country, and we have for a few years. What's holding back the growth even more is job skills shortage. We have a massive skills shortage in this country.
And opioids.
Yeah, well, yes. Yeah, that is a huge issue. That is
Sure.
a huge issue. But to your points, I think those initiatives are important for our industry, whether it's overall understanding of what's going on in manufacturing. Some of these are small, medium companies that feel very isolated.
Mm-hmm.
The general media doesn't touch on the kinds of stuff that's important to them.
Right.
And I think the idea of, there are so many great jobs for women in this industry, and there's many women that are very successful at it, and it's a false narrative that women don't have opportunities in the manufacturing. So we really applaud your efforts in that area.
Thank you. Actually, our first woman's show for Wham was back November of last year. And we had Anna Hess, who was a Rosie the Riveter in the 40s, with her mother. And it was a great show.
Yeah.
And coming up in this coming November as our anniversary edition, if you will, episode, we do have a secret 96-year-old who's still working. All right, Linda, producer, we got her working, right?
We're getting some flack from the producer off camera here.
Yeah. We're going to do this. We have a 96-year-old
I love it.
who first went to work at 85.
Wow.
I'm not going to tell you what she does.
Okay.
It's really great. But we are having a lot of fun doing this. We get a lot of commentaries. We get a lot of people looking to be guests on the show. And all that's working. We're getting great traffic.
Yep, good.
We've had, just over 800,000 downloads in the last 2 years.
Yeah, that's great.
So we're moving forward.
Yeah.
And the metal business also is gaining ground in this economy.
I bet.
I'd like to share with you a couple of stories, all metal and forged stories. As I was talking earlier about when the phones ring, and we know easily when a good inquiry comes in, the phone rings and the guy, hey, I got a good inquiry from, so on. And we would get a lot of inquiries because we handle oddball type projects.
Yeah.
And actually Google, way back when this was all new, if you did not get high traffic on one of your keywords, they would drop that keyword from your list of keywords. And we argued with them, saying that our keywords are they're very unusual, they're very particular, and they're very expensive. So I could get one visitor looking for one item, and we can quote that job, produce the job, and it's a huge project. And they got it for a while, and somebody said no, and so we went back and forth. We have one right now that we've been working on for a year, and this is actually to thanks to Thomas Net dot whatever .com, the books, whatever. We're working on this project a year. It's a hydro energy program out in the middle of the Pacific, which over a 4 or 5 year period is going to be a $40 million job. And this was based on one key word. And so there are benefits to those little crackers. You know?
It is amazing, Lou. We, at the end of the day, we're kind of data geeks, right? We're looking at all this data. Our taxonomy has 96,000 individual points. We cover 72,000 different categories. The ability for us to understand when someone comes to ThomasNet and wants to put in something that they're looking for, how do they phrase it? How do they put it? Where do they go next? What other products and services do they look at that might have correlation to that is really amazing. And all just a way of saying, we endlessly use that data to improve the user experience, make it easier for the user to find what they're looking for. But oftentimes our users aren't completely sure what they're looking for. Use the expression oddball, I could substitute the word custom. Right, that this may be something that is not easily perhaps put together, or different sized lots, or whatever it might be. And so an awful lot of the volume buyers that use ThomasNet are looking for something that's very specific. It's not a commodity product that you could buy from any distributor. It really is something that's going to be more either customized and custom manufactured, or it's a service that's going to be somewhat unique.
We're having an issue right now. We haven't talked about it yet, and that's about the steel tariffs. And there are many things with regards to steel products that are not made in this country anymore. And without any regard for the absence of our ability to produce, where we can go and buy it from Europe, South America, China, wherever, the tariff has been imposed, which is now the beginning of a steel shortage in this country. We have it right now. This is
and aluminum, by the way, too.
And aluminum. Oh, absolutely. And we're going to be coming out with an article in our MMO e-zine, Metals and Manufacturing Outlook e-zine, that's coming out, I think, next week. And the title of the article is, somebody give me a help here. Stupid tariff. Trump's stupid tariffs? Yes, I think that's the title. Sorry if I'm insulting anybody, but it is his tariff, and they never win. They've always lost. So
it is what's the old adage? We live in interesting times, or you should be so lucky to live in interesting times. If you go back through history, there is not a lot of evidence that tariffs are successful. And the fact of the matter is we live in a global economy and have for a very long time. This is not just because of the internet. This is not a new phenomenon. The idea of global trade has been around for, since the 1700s, for gosh sakes. And so I think you have a perspective there. What has arguably proven successful is the threat of tariffs. So almost every sitting president has either attempted to implement, threatened to implement, or implemented tariffs at some point in time to create a negotiation around something. The optimist in me thinks that that's what this is. The pessimist in me thinks that perhaps this is a more complicated issue. I will say, and if you look at our data, and I've shared this with you before, we saw steel surging in demand probably 11 months ago now. Now, initially, we thought, because the tariffs were it was Article 232 related stuff. It wasn't really in the headlines like it is today. What we now realize we were seeing is, if you remember, Kobe Steel had been passing, I'll call it fraudulent or subpar steel.
It definitely was fraudulent.
They're a public company in Japan. They were clearly going to their biggest customers ahead of the announcement and telling them, because I'm not going to name the names of customers, but you would imagine all the major auto companies and aerospace companies. We could see what they were doing, and we're thinking, why are they sourcing? I mean, are orders that good that they're sourcing? They were looking for second and third tier or different supplier, obviously.
Right.
Then we can see the impact of the tariffs. And steel has been in the top 3 of our top 10 almost every week since.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And some of it does have to do with the tariffs, there's no question.
We actually we did get calls from our All Metals and Forge customers about whether we've supplied them Kobe steel in their
Did you
forges.
really?
Yes.
Interesting.
So we responded to them, and then we wrote an article and put it on our All Metals and Forge website, and then we did put it into our magazine, Metals and Manufacturing, telling them that we're not involved in this, but we did tell them the story of what Kobe did. Yeah. And it's really amazing that they would dare do this. I mean, it's lives that are at stake.
It is stunning. I mean, you're talking aerospace and automotive.
Yeah.
I mean, and construction.
I mean, who cares if your refrigerator door falls
your
out?
house, your car, and your plane, right? I mean, come on.
Right.
No, it's remarkable, and it was one of those, I think, stories that was hard to wrap your head around. That a company at that level, because the level of complicity to pull something like that had to have been pretty broad.
But, well, of course. And but based on the way life is right now globally, I think we're all facing some real questionable times. And I just hope that we all come out of it on the other side, all in good shape.
Yeah. I think again, we try to use the demand data we have as a predictor. We're not predicting markets.
Right.
We're trying to look at different dynamics. If you look at certainly right now, the health around demand of things that would demonstrate a very, very healthy manufacturing economy. The demand for CNC machining, prototyping, other things that would say, hey, I need this manufactured in volume for this custom part or tool or whatever the heck that it might be. Those are oftentimes kind of early faint signals of a continuing to lift economy. And I think that's going to continue for a while. I think the secondary thing for U.S. manufacturing specifically, U.S. manufacturing, and I don't need to tell you, went through a very fallow period. And the reason it did is, yes, there was foreign competition, but it was not unlike the U.S. auto industry, which in the 70s came to a collapse. But it resurged. And U.S. manufacturing has resurged, and almost for the same reasons. Manufacturing technology today, you go into the average factory floor in the U.S., and there's advanced robotics, there's man plus machine, there's all kinds of things happening. U.S. manufacturing is much more competitive today. I think the third thing is the recent tax bill had something in it that I think was kind of interesting, and I don't know that the average person, I didn't initially until a friend of mine pointed it out. It had a one-time tax benefit to bring cash back onto these shores. So big companies like Apple and others have trillions of dollars sitting offshore. They would pay 38% tax if they brought that money onto the U.S. They had a one-time benefit that it would go at 15%. So you're seeing Apple and these other companies pull it back. Well, in many cases, they put that into manufacturing. And so you're seeing, they call it reshoring. You're seeing a bit of that. We think, based on the data we're looking at, those trends are going to continue. I do think the U.S. industry needs to figure out its global presence. And I think the U.S. is probably going through a redefining stage of really understanding how it fits on the global stage, if you will. But all these industries, are interconnected today.
Absolutely.
So. And
I think it was the Clinton administration that's really brought on globalization to the level that it is today.
Absolutely.
Because he pushed it and pushed it and pushed it, and he got it through. And I mean, we've been doing trading throughout the world for 100 years or more. But he was very big on globalization.
The other trend that we're watching very carefully is look, you and I have spent a lot of time talking about the impact of the internet. And Forbes did a profile on Thomas recently where they referred to us as the 120-year-old internet company. I love that line. So we've lived through the transition from print to digital and are now thriving in a digital world. But boy, it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, it's quite a transition to make those, types of transitions. I think the broad-based industrial marketplace is about to go through a very similar transition. There's a lot of buzzwords about this, the industrial internet, the Internet of Things,
Right.
Industry 4.0. There's a lot of people trying to struggle to define
Right.
the category. I always kind of use simplistic terms to define it, but it is advanced digital technology combined with traditional industrial products and services.
Where was the easy part of that?
But what's easy about it is cost and performance today.
Yeah.
You and I can hook things up very inexpensively to the internet because the whole planet is wired. And
Sure.
I think that is also going to stimulate a lot of growth in our markets because we're going to find new applications for existing products and services by simply adding basic sensor-based technology to these products and services and providing advanced capabilities for the buyer of those in ways that we haven't even dreamed of yet. So I think that's a positive for our industry too.
Tony, I think that this has been great. I hope that this proves out to help you with your people
Thank
and
you. Very
help
kind
me
to have us on.
have it help me. I'm friends with the big guy. So our segment is ending at this point, and we're going to do this more.
I look forward to it.
Okay, thank
Thank you,
you.
Lou.
Thanks, Tony.